that's one of the methods that Putin and the Russians use historically to take over a country and to incorporate it into its own empire.
So specifically, what are you asking for from the international community?
From the international community, we're asking that the IOM and the UNHCR start acting within the borders of Ukraine. They come into the western oblasts, which are Lviv Oblast, Ivano-Frankivsk Oblast, Volyn Oblast. They come into some places like Poltava, where people from eastern Ukraine are displaced, and provide services which are shelter, food, heat, schools for the children, and help the Ukrainian people stay in Ukraine. Most of the people, as I've seen that CNN has done interviews with people in the refugee centers, as well as with the mayor of Lviv, most people would have wanted to stay in Ukraine. They don't want to leave. They're being forced to leave, and the international community is complicit in this ethnic cleansing by only helping those who've left the country and not providing services to those who stay within the country.
Dr. Ilona Suprun, we appreciate you speaking out this morning. Thank you so much for the work you're doing, and thank you for being with us.
Thank you very much.
And New Day continues right now.
This is CNN Breaking News.
Good morning to our viewers here in the United States and all around the world. It is Wednesday, March 16th. I'm John Berman with Brianna Keeler. And breaking overnight, Russian forces shelling a residential building just a short distance from the city center of Kyiv. This is new video we're just getting in right now. Rescue workers evacuated dozens of people. There are reports of injuries. We have the video just into CNN showing the moment the building was hit. Watch this. That is a residential complex just a short distance from the city center of Kyiv. Deliberate attacks on civilians. Now, with his capital under attack, the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is set to address the U.S. Congress just a short time from now. Earlier today, Zelensky said that Russia is suddenly getting more realistic in its negotiating position as talks between the two countries continue. Zelensky did not offer specifics there. This morning, there are new signs of serious strain in the Russian attack. The UK Defense Ministry says the Kremlin is calling in military reinforcements from across its country, Russia, a broad swath of Russia, to replenish the losses inside Ukraine. The Ukrainians claim they blew up at least 3 Russian military helicopters. You can see the pictures here during a strike at Kherson's airport. Still, moments ago, a TV tower in the central Ukrainian city of Vinnytsia. We can show you where that is. Our team was there just yesterday. A TV tower in Vinnytsia hit. This is nowhere near where the main conflict areas are. So you can see the Russians expanding their target zone there. It was a Russian rocket that knocked out the city's broadcasting facilities.
And several Ukrainian cities still taking heavy fire, as Berman was saying there. This is drone footage revealing just the utter devastation in Okterka, which is a hard-hit area near Kharkiv. And in Mariupol, Ukrainian officials say Russian forces are holding people captive at a hospital. Thousands of civilians are struggling to escape the city. There's no way out, though, for so many of them. After President Zelensky speaks to Congress this morning, President Biden is expected to announce $800 million in new security assistance for Ukraine. And Biden also plans to travel to Europe next week. Let's go to CNN's chief national security correspondent, Jim Sciutto, who is live for us on Capitol Hill. Jim, you have some new reporting on what the U.S. is sending Ukraine.
That's right. As President Zelensky prepares to address Congress just behind me here and ask the U.S. for additional military assistance, I'm told that the U.S. and its NATO allies are already sending additional air defense systems. These are surface-to-air missile systems, not the S-300, which is something that Zelensky has asked for, and other both Democratic and Republican senators have been talking about, an effort still underway to get that system, but other Soviet-era missile systems. They're known as the SA-8, 10, 12, and 14. These are also surface-to-air missile systems, mobile systems that have an altitude range, low and medium altitude, not as high an altitude as the S-300, but a greater altitude, allows the Ukrainian military to hit targets at a higher altitude than the shoulder-fired Stinger missiles we've been talking a lot about in recent weeks. So this would be, once these get into the country, and I'm told that they are on their way, they've been sourced and on their way into Ukraine, would give the Ukrainian military an ability to better defend itself, not just against Russian aircraft, but these systems give them the capability to strike incoming cruise missiles fired often from Russian territory. So this shows that the military assistance that the U.S. and its NATO partners are sending to Ukraine is expanding. These systems on the way to better help Ukraine defend itself against what are really just relentless Russian attacks.
Yeah, it raises the possibility, interesting one, that the Ukrainian forces grow stronger with higher capabilities the longer this conflict goes on.
Yeah.
Jim, I want your take on this because you have now lived through these weeks and weeks of backs and forth of talks of negotiations. A lot of interesting language over just the last few hours from both the Ukrainians and the Russians. Zelensky says the Russians are becoming more realistic. Lavrov, the foreign minister of Russia, claiming that specific language might be within reach. What's going on here?
Well, it's interesting to watch the language from both sides. The give, and again, this is perception from the outside. We don't know what's happening on the table between these two parties, but at least in public statements, you don't see the Russians asking publicly anymore for what they've called denazification. The government of Ukraine is not a Nazi government. Zelensky, as we've noted many times, himself Jewish, but that's a term that Russia has used to get rid of this government and replace it with its own pro-Putin, pro-Russian government. That is something Russians aren't talking about anymore. You also see something of a change in language from the Ukrainians about NATO membership. A discussion, and even Antony Blinken was talking about this morning, that it is not realistic to imagine that Ukraine would become a member of NATO anytime soon. That the possibility that Ukraine might take that demand off the table initially, as long as it gets security guarantees, right? That Russia will not invade again, that Russia makes a commitment and its allies make a commitment. That's movement, right? It brings you sort of from here to here, perhaps, if they stick to those commitments. The question is, how do you get from here to here? An agreement, a meeting of the minds that ends the hostilities on the ground. By the way, Ukrainians say Russian forces got to go, right? I mean, they can't remain in the country in any way, shape, or form that they're going to be satisfied with.
Yeah, there's all the reasons in the world to be skeptical of this, but at the same time, the change in language over the last several hours is unmistakable and bears watching. Jim Sciutto, thank you so much for being with us. I want to bring in CNN Global Affairs analyst and Time Magazine contributor Kim Dozier. Kim, thank you so much for being with us. And you have noticed some fascinating language over the last few hours from the United Kingdom Defense Ministry, saying basically the Russian troops are strapped right now. They're under serious strain. What did they say, and what do you see here?
Well, this is from the intelligence arm of the Defense Ministry, and their assessment is that the Russians are taking such heavy losses that they're having to pull troops from other parts of Russia to backfill the troops that are in those stalled positions. And they're also furiously hiring private contractors from groups like the Wagner Group to, they think, try to control the cities that have already been taken over to free up those forces to join the offensive fight.
You know, it is interesting because people have been looking at this map here and they've been seeing the areas where Russian troops are operating, they have been growing, right? But just because you see this in red doesn't mean that it's easy for the Russians to control.
Yes, and Ukrainians on the ground say this often means that they control some of the major highways and routes along these areas, but not the backways and byways. And just because they've taken a city, they've taken Melitopol, yes, but the people in that city haven't given in to Russian rule. Some of them are hiding in their homes, but they are reporting that the Russians are having to kidnap activists at night to try to tamp some of this down. And every time they use soldiers for that, those are soldiers that are not helping take territory in the rest of Ukraine.
So you heard Jim Sciutto's report there. We're going to hear from President Zelensky addressing the U.S. Congress very shortly. He's going to make an ask, clearly what he wants. President Biden is going to make an offer after that over what the U.S. is actually sending. We know that the United States has already sent in so many of these javelins, anti-tank weapons, which are hugely useful for troops. Also, the Stingers, anti-aircraft weapons. Jim was reporting, though, a higher level of anti-aircraft weaponry that'll be available to the Ukrainians. How happy do you think they will be, and how much less than their ask do you think it really is?
Look, President Zelensky is still going to do what you do in any bargaining situation. He's going to ask for the maximum. He's going to ask for a no-fly zone, as he did of Canadian lawmakers yesterday, in hopes that the pressure on the Biden administration will be such from Congress and from the American people that the Biden administration gives them not only some of the weapons on offer, but possibly more armed drones. The drones that Ukraine bought from Turkey ahead of the war have proved devastating to the Russian military. But they only had reportedly about 36 of them, and some of them surely have been taken out. And so they need resupply, and they'd surely like more modern ones. So, you know, the laundry list is going to keep growing as long as this war goes on.
This is the Turkish drone right here, and you can see here we have some imagery here which shows you just how effective it can be against a Russian column there. No wonder the Ukrainians want more of that. I do want to ask about another development this morning. We're getting word from our crews there. We've got a team that had been in Vinnytsia right here. This city that isn't particularly near the conflict areas, there was a strike on a television tower there, a broadcasting facility. Why do the Russians keep doing this?
Between hitting those broadcasting facilities and also, as from what we can tell, actually targeting news teams, it shows that the information war is hurting their war effort, whether it is the Russian TV producer who made the protest in Russia proper on state television, or the mothers of Russian soldiers who are starting to step up and start their protest, which has in the past caused Russia to pull out of at least one previous conflict. This is the kind of action you take when the message is going against you and you're trying to win on the information front.
And again, we just talked to Jim about this, but we're getting this conflicting language, not conflicting language, we're getting language from both the Ukrainians and the Russians now about these negotiations that sounds different than it has over the last several days. Do you have a sense of what the sides would be willing to accept?
Well, the most important hint that we've gotten from President Zelensky is now in a couple of different comments. He has said he basically understands that NATO membership is likely off the table. So that was a major ask of Russia, that they strip from the Ukrainian constitution that they were going to be trying to join NATO. But it seems that Russia is still pushing to to have Ukraine recognize its annexation of Crimea and possibly also recognize the Donbas area and maybe some more of the territory that has been taken in this conflict so far. And Ukraine is still doing well enough on the battlefield that it's not ready to accept that.
Yeah, look, it's hard to imagine Ukraine accepting anything that would just give this to Russia. And up until this point, that has been the Russian position. We will see if there's any change in that. Kim Dozier, great to have you here. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
President Zelensky is about to address the U.S. Congress, asking for more U.S. help as Russia continues to attack his country. We're joined by the chairman of the Armed Services Committee on what he expects to hear and what more the U.S. should be doing.